Ozzy Osbourne's sudden death on July 22nd, 2025, sent shockwaves across the world. Known as the Prince of Darkness and the legendary voice of Black Sabbath, Ozzy wasn't just a musician. He was an icon whose energy, charisma, and chaos defined an entire genre. Fans everywhere struggled to process the loss, asking themselves, how could someone who seemed so alive on stage just days earlier be gone? Then, Tony Iommi, Ozzy's longtime friend and Black Sabbath bandmate, broke his silence. His words didn't just recount the passing of a rock legend, they revealed the depth of a lifelong bond, a brotherhood forged in smoke-filled classrooms and echoed through decades of music madness and unwavering loyalty. But to truly understand the weight of that loss, we must go back to a final night, to a friendship that began in humble streets, and to the rise of heavy metal itself. July 22nd, 2025 began like any other day for fans worldwide. Yet it ended in heartbreak. Ozzy Osbourne, aged 76, had passed peacefully in his sleep at his home in Buckinghamshire, surrounded by his wife, Sharon, and their children. Just weeks earlier, he had stood on a stage under the glowing lights of Villa Park Stadium in Birmingham, performing what would unknowingly be his final show. Even battling Parkinson's disease and a string of spinal surgeries, Ozzy had delivered a performance that was haunting, emotional, and electric. Seated on a custom leather throne, he gave everything he had, unaware that the goodbye he had longed to give the world would never fully come. Fans and bandmates alike were stunned. Reports suggest that after his final concert, Ozzy's health had stabilized, and he was even planning to return to the studio for one last track. But fate intervened, quietly, without fanfare. His final moments were peaceful, intimate, and profoundly human, a stark contrast to the larger-than-life persona he projected on stage. On July 5th, 2025, something historic unfolded in Birmingham. The original members of Black Sabbath reunited for what would become their final performance together. The event, titled Back to the Beginning, wasn't just a concert. It was a tribute to the city that had birthed their dreams and a final bow from a band that had changed the music world forever. Ozzy, frail yet determined, made a dramatic entrance. Seated on a winged leather throne, he commanded the stage with the haunting charisma that had made him famous. The audience of over 45,000 fans, along with millions streaming worldwide, watched as a legend poured his final energy into every note. The performance wasn't flashy, it didn't need pyrotechnics or grand effects. Every chord, every word, every glance was imbued with history, memory, and gratitude. Supporting acts like Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Slayer, Tool, and Pantera joined the event, not just to perform, but to honor the pioneers who had inspired them. Between sets, stories were shared about how Ozzy and Black Sabbath shaped careers and influenced an entire generation of musicians. The atmosphere was electric, a mixture of celebration, sorrow, and reverence. Behind the scenes, Ozzy made it clear that this night was deeply personal. Despite doctors' concerns, he insisted on performing one last time for the fans and the bandmates who had been his brothers for over 5 decades. "I'd rather go out singing in Birmingham than watching from a hospital bed," he reportedly said. Even more remarkable, the event had a philanthropic side. Ticket sales, merchandise, and global streaming donations raised approximately €140 million, supporting Cure Parkinson's, a cause close to Ozzy's heart, and Birmingham Children's Hospital, honoring the band's roots and commitment to their hometown. As the final chords of Paranoid echoed, the crowd fell silent. Ozzy raised a trembling hand, tears welling in his eyes. Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward stood beside him, sharing a moment that transcended music. This wasn't just a concert, it was history of farewell and a testament to the life and spirit of a man who had given everything to his art. The world turned its attention to Tony Iommi after Ozzy's passing, waiting for him to share his memories, grief, and perspective. On July 23rd, 2025, Iommi spoke to ITV News, describing the loss as unreal. "I woke up and it hit me like a ton of bricks," he said. The pain went beyond losing a fellow musician. It was about losing someone who had been a constant companion through decades of highs and lows, chaos and creation, fame and infamy. In the weeks before Ozzy's death, he had expressed a deep desire to perform one final show in Birmingham, not for spectacle, but for something heartfelt. He wanted a proper goodbye to the fans who had stood by him for over 50 years. Iommi's voice broke as he recalled the final days. "There won't ever be another like him. Geezer Bill and I have lost our brother." These weren't just words about stage presence or fame. They were about a man who had fought his demons, endured countless hardships, and still inspired millions. The tribute resonated globally. Fans flooded social media with condolences and throwback photos. Radio stations played Sabbath's classics nonstop, and musicians from Metallica to Elton John paid homage. Ozzy wasn't just a musician, he was a cultural icon whose influence spanned generations. Before fame, before the wild tours, before sold-out stadiums, Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne were just two boys navigating the gritty, working-class streets of Birmingham, England. They first crossed paths at Birchfield Road School in the early 1960s, a city defined by industry, smoke, and hard labor. Ozzy, born John Michael Osbourne, was the fourth of 6 children in a crowded home in Aston. He was known as the class clown, often in trouble, but with an infectious personality that drew people in. Tony, by contrast, was quieter, reserved, and serious, already harboring a deep love for music. Despite their differences, circumstances and shared ambitions brought them together. Their early bond wasn't immediate, but proximity, shared experiences, and the desire to escape a life on the factory floor forged a connection. Both boys sensed they were destined for more than the ordinary, and this quiet recognition would eventually lead to one of the most legendary partnerships in music history. By the early 1970s, Black Sabbath emerged from Birmingham with a sound unlike anything the world had heard. Tony Iommi's heavy, riff-driven guitar and Ozzy's haunting, emotive vocals created a dark, intense musical landscape. Their debut album, Black Sabbath 1970, opened with ominous church bells and rolling thunder, setting a tone that was both unsettling and captivating. The band's follow-up, Paranoid, catapulted them to international fame with hits like Iron Man, War Pigs, and the title track. Black Sabbath didn't just make music, they created a movement, giving voice to fears, frustrations, and the raw realities of working-class life. Throughout the 1970s, the band released a series of albums, Master of Reality, Volume 4 Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage, pushing the boundaries of rock and shaping the heavy metal genre. Fans were captivated by the intensity, honesty, and power that Ozzy and Tony brought to every song. Not all was smooth in Black Sabbath's journey. By 1979, tensions and personal struggles reached a breaking point. Ozzy's substance abuse and the pressures of touring forced the band to make the painful decision to part ways with him. While Ozzy embarked on a solo career, Iommi continued to experiment with new lineups, trying to preserve the band's legacy. Despite the separation, the bond between Ozzy and Tony never fully disappeared. Time and reflection healed old wounds. In 2013, the original trio of Iommi, Osbourne, and Geezer Butler reunited to release 13, a studio album that recaptured the raw energy of their early work and soared to the top of international charts. Though Bill Ward did not join the tour, the reunion was a triumph, a reminder of the unbreakable chemistry that had always defined Black Sabbath. For Tony Iommi, Ozzy's passing was the end of more than a musical chapter, it was losing a brother. "There's never going to be another Ozzy," he said, reflecting on decades of shared highs, lows, laughter, and heartbreak. Ozzy's final moments, giving all he had on stage, were emblematic of his life, devoted to music, devoted to fans, and devoted to the bond he shared with his bandmates. Ozzy's legacy wasn't just in album sales or awards. It was in the moments he created, the chaos he inspired, and the generations of musicians who followed in his footsteps. From teenage fans discovering Paranoid for the first time to rock icons citing him as inspiration, his influence remains immeasurable. Through Tony's reflections, the audience sees not just the rock legend, but the man behind the myth, a friend, a brother, and a creative force whose spirit will endure through music memory and the hearts of those who loved him. Ozzy Osbourne's life was extraordinary, chaotic, and unforgettable. From the smoke-filled streets of Birmingham to the grand stages of the world, he left an indelible mark on music, culture, and the lives of millions. Tony Iommi's tribute reminds us that the heart of Ozzy's legacy lies in connection, friendship, family, fans, and the music that binds them all. Even in death, Ozzy's roar echoes. The Prince of Darkness may have left the stage, but his influence, his voice, and the bond he shared with Tony Iommi will live forever.